New report from RBC says the sky-high cost of housing in Canada's largest city hasn't been enough to hollow out those cities' millennial populations. For more on that, we're joined now by the author of the report, RBC's Robert Hogue. Good to see you, Robert.
Well, good afternoon.
So here's what we've been hearing for a while now, the fact that as home prices became out of reach for an entire generation, we were worried that they're going to leave the city and then all the vibrancy would go with them. You take a look, you say not so.
Yeah, and in fact, it is true that some millennials are leaving the Canada's largest cities and towards, kind of close by, right? Now, within the same province, within certain distance, sort of commuting distance. It's a bit of a long commute. But on net, when you look at the entire pictures of millennials coming from abroad and other provinces, what we observe is that the millennial counts within Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal is still going up. And in fact, in 2008 has gone up the most, I guess, ever since we've got the data for the last dozen years.
That's interesting that the most since we've had data. Is there any way we can explain why this generation, I mean, the millennials are there now, but we have all passed through our 20s and early 30s. What is it about them that's drawing these kind of numbers?
Well, I mean, they are very mobile. Usually it's individuals and households and early in their career. They're looking at some of them is their first job or they're going to study in those large cities. And the big factor here, Greg, is the immigrants. I mean, this is what is overwhelming the departure of some millennials towards other places within the same province is the sheer numbers of immigrants of that. We're talking those between the age of 20 and 35 roughly coming into the cities more than make up for the losses of millennials just saying, no, let's look for cheaper housing somewhere else.
Now, what I found interesting in your study as well is that when someone does eventually find themselves moving out of the city core and into the surrounding suburbs, they're actually still adding to the economic life of the city. For our example here, of course, the 416 is Toronto proper. I live out in the 905, and some people say that I am a blight on the resources of this city by not living in it, but yet using its roads and its transportation. But apparently, by working here, I'm adding to the economic life.
Well, yes, but in many ways now you and many others, including myself, don't have that much of a choice in the sense of the relative housing costs living closer to core, and for the type of housing you're looking for as well, right? And if you're looking to house an entire family, an more affordable condo downtown might just not do the trick. So it's it does stress infrastructures, for example, but that's the big challenge of all. I would argue all the major global cities. This is not just a Toronto issue or a Vancouver or Montreal issue. This is much more of a global large city kind of challenge.
On the economic front as well, by virtue of the fact that people come from outside the city to work here, and that would add to this city's GDP, I imagine.
It does, and at the same time, when you look at some of those dynamics that we've looked at, it's the departure of those millennials towards the same kind of. We're talking here, for example, in the Greater Toronto area, areas like Guelph or Kitchener-Waterloo or even London. And those that flight of millennials add to those areas of economic, I guess, growth and vibrancy. So it is it's a fact. The immigrants help the vibrancy of the Toronto, the core, the closer to the core, or the GTA. And at the same time, the dynamics also help the vibrancy of kind of surrounding areas.
Now, of course, the headlines when we talk about affordability and the younger people, the millennials, seem to center around owning a home. Is it becoming more of a reality, if this is the new reality for Vancouver, for Toronto, for the big urban centers, that people are going to rent for a very long time, maybe even for life?
Yeah, and that's definitely something that, from a policy point of view, to really hone in and also accept that yes, affordability is a major issue. You can tweak it a bit and make it a little bit more affordable on the ownership side, but ultimately, at the end of the day, if you want people to live more affordably, and those large cities, I think much more of those, especially the younger age cohort, will be on the rental side. And as you point out, it could be for a very long time as well, which is nothing, when you look at that's a reference to a prior report that we've done, you compare it to other global cities, the ownership rate in Toronto or GTA is very high. So I think you have to expect that the ownership rate will will decline over time, which means demand for rentals is going to increase.
Are the cities, lastly I want to ask you, are the cities doing the right things right now in terms of policy to make sure this is an area that young people can live and continue to live?
I think more can be done in the sense that, again, I think a lot more can be done, especially on the rental side. Looking forward, again, just reiterating the fact that the demand for rentals is going to increase. When you look at purpose-built apartment buildings, the construction has increased in the Toronto area, for example, in recent years, but it's nowhere near where it should be.
All right. Always fascinating to speak with you. Thanks for joining us, Robert.
It's been a pleasure.
That was RBC senior economist Robert Hogue.